folks. Today we're talking about we're shifting gears a bit. We're going to we're gonna sail over. What I wanted initially was to start the new imperialism, but it's a little bit of a janky and weird. It's like not a good Wikipedia entry. So instead, I was turned on to this idea, going to the East India Company, which is a company that spans the better part of the modern era of the world, basically. So it was an active company that for not the 16th century and the 20th century, and 21st, of course, basically spans the entirety of the modern era. So that's what we're going to get into today. You can see, zoom in for you guys. It spans the centuries that include and aren't limited to the Age of Enlightenment, Age of Piracy, philosophers like Hobbes, Spinoza, Descartes, Isaac Newton, Leibniz, Hume, Voltaire, Rousseau, musicians like Mozart, mathematicians and polymaths like Laplace, although I think he was more of just a mathematician, War of Spanish Succession, Glorious Revolution, and so on. The Dutch Golden Age, of course. So this is a topic that spans all of these, much more, of course, and brings us right into sort of this early modern period that I think starts around here. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into the East India Company. So we're going to jump straight into history and origins. There we are. So in 1577, Francis Drake, he sets out on an expedition from England to plunder Spanish settlements in South Africa in search of gold and silver. So this is direct competition to the Spaniards, who are, of course, conquering and have conquered much of South America. Sailing in the Golden Hind, he achieved this, and then sailed across the Pacific Ocean in 79, known then only to the Spanish and Portuguese. So Francis Drake fellow is a very bold expeditioner on the part of the English crown. Okay, this guy is basically the spearhead, it seems. Let's see. So Drake eventually sailed into the East Indies and came across the Moluccas, also known as the Spice Islands, and he meets then Sultan Babala. Okay, this guy is he's the king of the Spice Islands. He exchanged linen in exchange for linen, gold, silver. The English obtained a large haul of exotic spices, including cloves and nutmeg, and he returns to England in 1580, becomes a hero. His circumnavigation raised an enormous amount of money for England's coffers, and investors received a return of some 5,000%. So that's for every pound they put in, they get 5,000 pounds, which is preposterous. This thus started an important element in the Eastern design during the late 16th century. Soon after Spanish Armada's defeat in 1588, the captured Spanish and Portuguese ships. Oh, of course, sorry. I want to just reinforce the Spanish Armada's defeat. Okay, Spain basically starts. I feel like spearheads along with Portugal, of course. The Age of Sail, the Age of Exploration. People like Magellan are just the first, and it seems very likely that Spain will continue and should be in charge. But something is wrong. Spain isn't able to become what would later become like the British Empire. Something hinders something. There's something historically wrong with the way that Spain is organized, such that it does not become this massive global power. Okay, that Britain will become during this modern era. And part of the ongoing failures, I think, of Spain's inability to become this global power is, in fact, due to perhaps, or just is made visual, or is presented through this failure of the Spanish Armada. The Spanish Armada is an attempt to just click in really quick. It's an attempt to sail up the English Channel, join the army of these fellows, Duke of Parma, and escort an invasion force that would land and overthrow Elizabeth I. Okay, in effect, trying to conquer, the British Isles. Something that fails. Something that takes a lot of energy and fails. A lot of manpower and money. Look at what's going on here. 34 warships. They have 24 warships. They have 38 auxiliary ships. They have 31 supply. They have all these pieces. Okay, so it's a total of 55,000 men. 137 ships. Hugely outnumbered. Okay. Alright, enough about that. So after the Spanish Armada's defeat in 88, the captured Spanish and Portuguese ships and cargoes enabled English voyagers to travel the globe in search of riches. So they have all these Spanish and Portuguese ships, and they start traveling the globe. London merchants presented a petition to Elizabeth I for permission to sail to the Indian Ocean. The aim was delivered as a decisive blow to the Spanish and Portuguese monopoly of Far Eastern trade. Elizabeth granted her permission in 91. James Lancaster in the Bonaventure and 2 other ships financed by the Levant Company sailed from England around the Cape of Good Hope. Notice that there's all these companies. These are quite literally companies. Okay, these have headquarters. They have lawyers and all of the kind of organizational backbone is like a modern day company. HR included, I'm assuming, or their equivalent of HR. And there are people here, and they have stock, and they raise funds, and they go out on voyages, which is sort of like a startup in today's parlance that goes off and tries to cure something or fix something or create some new technology. Back in those days, they would quite literally get into the blue ocean and sail and see if they can find new routes and new items of value to bring back and sell at a much higher price. You can get returns. Shareholders could get 5,000% returns. Okay, so this is this is probably perhaps the most lucrative businesses for a man living in England at the time to enter into. So where are we? So having sailed around Cape Comorin to the Malay Peninsula, they preyed on Spanish and Portuguese ships there before returning to England in 1594. The biggest prize that galvanized English trade was the seizure of a large Portuguese carrack, the Madre de Deus, by Walter Raleigh and the Earl of Cumberland at the Battle of Flores on 13th August 92. They brought her to Dartmouth, where she was the largest vessel ever seen in England, and she carried chests of jewels, pearls, gold, silver, all kinds of really valuable stuff. By the way, a carrack, that's what a carrack is, a massive ship of sorts. So in 96, 3 more English ships sailed east, but were all lost at sea. So just like a startup can fail or a company can go bankrupt, so can a company's voyage, right? It can just go bankrupt, and then all of the funding for that voyage, unfortunately, is unable to be returned and just was a failed venture. A year later, however, saw the arrival of Ralph Fitch, an adventurer merchant who, with his companions, had made a remarkable 9-year overland journey to Mesopotamia. Of course, this is overland and not with ships. Fitch consulted on Indian affairs and gave even more valuable information to Lancaster. So I think we're going to jump from here to early voyages to the East Indies. So Lancaster commanded the first India Company voyage in 1601 aboard the Red Dragon. And following the year, whilst sailing in the Malacca Straits, Lancaster took the rich 1,200-ton carrack Sao Tom carrying pepper and spices. The booty enabled the voyagers to set up 2 factories, trading posts, one on Bantam and one on Java, and another on the Moluccas. One on Bantam in Java, This is Java, and the other is on Moluccas in the Spice Islands, and this is all before leaving. On the return into England in 1603, they learned of Elizabeth's death, but Lancaster was knighted by the new king, James I, on account of the voyage's success. By the time the war with Spain had ended, the war with Spain, of course, is a conflict. It is the Anglo-Spanish conflict. So after this ends, the company had profitably breached the Spanish-Portuguese duopoly. New horizons opened for the English. In 1604, we have more voyages, and we have here, it seems, a table of the early and very, profitable voyages that solidified this as a lucrative business, a business that created a lot of wealth in the English economy. Okay, because what happens, I think, with this type of stuff, all these voyages, a lot of capital is flowing into. It's going from maybe like what was concentrated in certain classes and certain people, individuals. It goes into it's funneled into these ventures that have a large swath of shareholders, people that are perhaps not in the highest of classes. Okay, people that are coming up, and if they make good investments on the right ships, they get very wealthy. Okay, we're very wealthy. And then we have sort of a spread of wealth amongst the different classes in England, and that wealth eventually trickles down to everyone because they're buying goods and buying shoes and buying clothes and buying bread, and all of this, really just props up and supercharges the English economy, making everyone there productive and efficient, and so forming a complete monopoly. The prosperity that the officers of the company enjoyed allowed them to return to Britain and establish sprawling estates and businesses. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. Like this sort of, because it's uberly successful, there's a lot of wealth going around. Men are getting wealthy in Britain. This has profound effects on every single facet of British society. Okay, people are bringing in money. They have sprawling estates and businesses, and obtain political power such as seats in the House of Commons. So they're literally, because of their influence and power, they're becoming influential in politics. House of Commons is essentially like the American Senate or House of Reps. I don't know which one, but they have a little bit of a different governmental organization in Britain. They follow the Westminster parliamentary system. So ship captains sold their appointments to successors for up to £500, as recruits aimed to return to Britain wealthy by securing Indian money. Their royalties to their homeland increased. Okay, this is interesting. So the company developed a lobby, of course. So it's a form of advocacy. Thank you, perfect word. Lawfully, so it's not bribing. Attempts to directly influence legislators or governmental officials. Okay, so it's all lawful, and it's a form of advocacy. So the company developed a lobby in the English Parliament. Pressure from ambitious tradesmen formed and former company associates, pejoratively termed interlopers by the company, who wanted to establish private trading firms in India, led to the passing of the Deregulation Act in 1694. And there's literally a log of like what the company's debts are, and look at this. They say in 1801 the debts of the company amounts to 5 million something. Their effects 15 million, and their sales increased from 4, almost 5 million, 7.6 million. So they're profitable. All right, folks. This was interesting. I learned a lot. I'm also learning how ignorant I am, of course, like any one of these. I hope you guys enjoyed. Tune in for the next one as I explore more rabbit holes on Wikipedia. Have a good one.